Hey there, so this is my ranking of all of Paul Thomas Anderson's movies thus far, from worst to best as of 2026. Let's get started, let's get right into it. Number 10, Inherent Vice. I don't dislike Inherent Vice. It's an interesting movie, it's very well made, and Joaquin Phoenix is really good in it. But it is very confusing, it is very difficult to follow. Some people have told me don't worry too much about trying to follow the plot. Losing yourself in the conspiracy and the paranoia and the vibe of the movie is part of the point. And I have watched it with that in mind. But I still find, for me, it's just not one of the easier Paul Thomas Anderson movies to get into. I've seen it, I think, 3 times now, and I feel like that's enough. It's certainly an interesting movie, but just not as compelling to me as some of the others, so it is my number 10 pick. Number 9, Magnolia. Magnolia was actually the first movie that I saw by Paul Thomas Anderson. I remember renting it on VHS, back in the day, and I hadn't seen Boogie Nights or Hard Eight, and I remember as I was watching the movie thinking to myself, I need to make a mental note of who this director is and track down the rest of his work and keep an eye out for his future work because he's incredibly talented. Magnolia struck me a little bit like Robert Altman's movie Shortcuts, which is a great movie if you haven't seen it, but on cocaine in a good way. It had this amazing intensity to it, and this very interesting style of editing with the stories all kind of overlapping and weaving into each other, and this emotional momentum and intensity that just built up, and it was really great. And then, and I'm going to get into some spoilers here, so skip ahead if you don't want spoilers, the raining of the frogs happens, and it frankly kind of ruins the movie for me. I like surrealism in movies. I like weird stuff. I'm into it. But for me, the Raining of the Frogs just felt pretentious and lazy. The movie had such a realistic intensity to it, and then this crazy thing happens, and I just found it tonally jarring, and it just took me completely out of the movie. And then it's compounded as well by the Aimee Mann sing-along. At a certain point in the movie, all the characters are hearing this particular Aimee Mann song on the radio at the same time. Some of them start singing along and mouthing the lyrics, and it's just very cloying and stupid. And then the final third of the movie kind of drags on for me a little bit too. So those are my complaints, but the movie is very interesting, it's very original, it's full of really good performances from John C. Reilly and Julianne Moore and Philip Seymour Hoffman, and of course, Tom Cruise. I love Tom Cruise in this movie. It's really fun to see him play kind of this douche bro character and play against type. So I think Magnolia is a movie that's well worth seeing. It just has a couple problems that sort of ruin it for me. And there's a lot of other Paul Thomas Anderson movies that I like better that don't have those problems. So that's my number 9 pick. Moving right along to number 8, we have One Battle After Another. One Battle After Another is kind of the hot movie right now. It's the newest one by Paul Thomas Anderson. It won a bunch of awards. I think it won an Oscar. A lot of people seem to like it, but for me, it's really one of Paul Thomas Anderson's weaker movies. I do think it's a very well-directed movie, as is everything by Paul Thomas Anderson. I think it's worth seeing. I think Sean Penn turns in a pretty amazing performance that everyone should see. But I have a lot of logistical problems with the storytelling in One Battle After Another. I just didn't find it very plausible. Not that this kind of racism doesn't exist in our country. Unfortunately, it very much does. But that this one guy could command so many resources of the military or of ICE or whatever to tracking down an illegitimate child stemming from a relationship that I didn't quite buy to begin with. It just seemed a bit silly to me. And then the Christmas Adventurers Club guys, I found a bit tonally jarring because they're so evil and awful, but they're also kind of played for laughs, and it just felt like a tonal mismatch to me. I particularly didn't understand some of the mechanics of their part of the story, though. Like, I didn't understand how the one Christmas Adventurers Club guy randomly tracks down Lockjaw on the freeway and one hands a shotgun at him while driving 80 miles per hour. It's just like the movie turned into the Fast and the Furious for like 30 seconds, and it just seemed sort of silly to me. And then Lockjaw survives, and he goes back to the Christmas Adventurers Club people, I guess not realizing that they are the ones that tried to kill him. And the Christmas Adventurers Club people, for some reason, just happen to have lethal gas installed in their ventilation system so they can randomly murder people in their offices, and they have like a crematorium there to get rid of the body. Like, why not just not let him into the club? It just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And I thought Leonardo DiCaprio, and I'm drawing a blank on the girl who played his daughter, but I thought they both did a good job and turned in good performances. I just didn't find them as memorable as protagonists as some of the protagonists in Paul Thomas Anderson's other films. I liked Benicio del Toro. I liked some of the set pieces. I liked the score by Johnny Greenwood. It's a movie that I do think is worth seeing. I just think there's a lot of logistical problems with the story, at least for me. Maybe something was going over my head. You can leave a comment and let me know if you disagree or if you want to defend the movie on some of these points. But for me, it was a little wonky, and I'm putting it at number 8. Number 7, Boogie Nights. From this point forward on the list, we're really getting into movies that I really like, that I'm a fan of. I'm a Paul Thomas Anderson fan in general, so most of his movies I do like, and that's definitely true of Boogie Nights. It was the second movie that I saw by him. I tracked it down right after seeing Magnolia. Even though I had some problems with Magnolia, I wanted to see more of what this director had done. So I got Boogie Nights, and I watched it, and it was great. And I watched it again pretty recently, and it still held up very well. I think Mark Wahlberg does a great job. William Macy is really interesting in it. John C. Reilly does great. Philip Seymour Hoffman. There's a lot of good performances in it. I really like the dark arc that it traces from the warm, fuzzy 70s into the greed-driven, drug-fueled 80s, and the way that impacts these characters and the industry that they work in. The direction of the movie is very showy. It's a very directed movie. You can tell it's going for artistry, and it wants to impress you, and it does. If the movie has a weakness to me, it actually falls to Burt Reynolds. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this one. A lot of people really love Burt Reynolds in this movie, and he might have even won some awards for it. But I remember hearing that Burt Reynolds didn't really like being in the movie, or he didn't get along with Paul Thomas Anderson or something like that. And I don't know if that's true or not, but if it is true, to me it really shows. To me, his performance just seems like he's irritated to be in the movie. He didn't really convince me. I didn't find the performance nearly as good as a lot of people seemed to. I thought it was a clever piece of casting, but a clever piece of casting doesn't automatically equal a great performance. I thought the performance itself felt very phoned in. Just my opinion, and it still doesn't detract from the movie. I mean, he's fine, I just don't think he's as great as some people say. I still think the movie is really solid overall. I would give it at least a 7 out of 10, and it is my number 7 pick. Number 6, Licorice Pizza. I really enjoyed Licorice Pizza, and I think it's Paul Thomas Anderson's funniest movie. I laughed a lot while I was watching it. I thought it's just peppered with so many interesting, funny characters and cameos. Sean Penn is really good in it. Tom Waits has a terrific cameo. Bradley Cooper, I thought, was a blast. And there are some other actors whose names I don't know off the top of my head, but who just play these really interesting, small characters that pop up throughout the movie. Some people aren't crazy about the relationship in this movie because it's a semi-romantic relationship going on between a young woman in her 20s and a boy who's 15. He's a very mature 15-year-old, but he is 15. I'm not sure why he's 15. They could have easily made him 17 or 18, and it wouldn't have been as much of an issue for many people. But for whatever reason, he is 15. But there's no sexual content in the movie. To me, it just seemed like a sweet coming-of-age sort of story as he, tries to pursue his crush on this girl who just becomes his good friend, but there is sort of a romantic tension between them. I could see some people arguing that the movie is a little bit meandering, and it doesn't really land in a heavy place. It just kind of goes along, and there's kind of a little bit of a twist towards the end of the movie, but it's really just mostly these characters sort of feeling out who they are, and then the movie kind of ends. It's really more the kind of movie you just sort of vibe out with and hang out inside of, as opposed to being like a tightly plot-driven movie. And for me, that's okay. That's actually, I think, true of a lot of Paul Thomas Anderson's films. So I would give this one, probably an 8 out of 10, and I really liked it. I think it's well worth seeing, and that's my number 6 pick. At number 5, we have The Master. The Master was probably the Paul Thomas Anderson movie that I was the most excited for when it came out. He had just done There Will Be Blood before that, and the trailers for The Master were really fantastic, and I was really looking forward to it. I went and saw it on the theater, I think on opening day, and I remember being a little bit let down by the movie when I first saw it, and feeling a little frustrated by it. The end of the movie kind of flirts with that Magnolia territory of feeling a little bit weird for weird's sake to me. And the movie as a whole, I remember thinking to myself that it felt like the first draft of a movie that needed a second and a third draft to really cohere and come together. And I still feel that way a little bit. But having said that, the movie has grown on me with each subsequent viewing. I can't overstate how brilliant I think Joaquin Phoenix is in The Master. His performance is, I think it's one of the best performances I've seen by an actor ever in film. It's right up there with Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood. He brings such a physicality to the character and all these interesting idiosyncrasies, and he just inhabits Freddie Quell in such a convincing way. He was so the right person for the part, and he did such a great job with it. And him and Paul Thomas Anderson just invented this crazy fucking character out of nothing. It's a really amazing creation. And Philip Seymour Hoffman is terrific as Lancaster Dodd, who, as I understand it, is loosely based on L. Ron Hubbard of the Scientology movement. The movie is beautiful. It's really gorgeously directed. The cinematography is fantastic. You could freeze frame this movie at almost any point and have a really compelling image worth looking at. I think it was filmed in 70mm, and I don't know, it's just visually spectacular. I think it could have come together a little more strongly in the very end, but other than that, it's a great movie. It's worth seeing. It's original and it's thought-provoking. It's gorgeously filmed. I would give it at least an 8.5 out of 10, and you should watch it, and it's my number 5 pick. Number 4 and number 3 were probably the toughest call for me on this list. They're really pretty interchangeable. They're about tied, but for my purposes here, I'm going to go with number 4 as Punch Drunk Love. I think Punch Drunk Love is a pretty underappreciated movie in Paul Thomas Anderson's catalog. At the time it came out, I don't think people really took Adam Sandler very seriously as a dramatic actor. A lot of people still don't, but he's gotten a little more cred, I think, since Uncut Gems a while back. And Uncut Gems is a terrific movie, if you haven't seen it, with a terrific performance by Adam Sandler. But when Punch Drunk Love came out, I mean, he was really only known for his screwball comedies. And I think, Adam Sandler fans probably went to the movie expecting an Adam Sandler type comedy, which it's not. And the people who might have been more receptive to the kind of surreal, intimate movie that Punch Drunk Love is, didn't go see it because they didn't want to go see an Adam Sandler movie. So I think it took a while for the movie to kind of fully find its audience, but I know it has an audience that does appreciate it, and I count myself among them. I think Adam Sandler is wonderful in this movie, and I think Paul Thomas Anderson did a great job of taking that sort of man-child quality that he has and subverting it and doing something dramatically interesting with it. The movie has some really interesting, unexpected twists and turns. It's a little bit surreal, but not aggressively weird. It's not weird in a way that takes me out of the movie, the way Magnolia does. The movie has this really visually interesting theme of using lens flares, blue and pink lens flares, and it's really unique and gives it a real style and an aesthetic that's very memorable to me. For some reason, Popeye seems to have been a little bit of an influence on this movie. I know Paul Thomas Anderson is a big Robert Altman fan, and they use the music from the Popeye movie, and I guess you could kind of see Barry as being like Popeye and the Philip Seymour Hoffman character as being like Bluto, and the Emily Watson character as being Olive Oyl, sort of. But regardless of that, it's a great movie. All three of the lead actors do a great job. It's really fun to see Philip Seymour Hoffman play a nasty villain. It's something he does really well. He did a great job of that in Mission Impossible 3, and an even better job of it here. Really different, really well directed, has one of my favorite soundtracks of any movie ever. It's a Johnny Greenwood soundtrack, and it's full of these like electronic bleeps and bloops with this kind of organic percussion, and the way it's layered into some of the scenes, it just builds this terrific intensity that's really unique and compelling and emotionally strange. The music is almost like its own character in the movie. It's so distinct and adds so much to what's happening on screen. It's a terrific movie, and I would give it, I think, an 8.75, let's say, out of 10. It's a terrific movie. Everyone should see it. It's my number 4 pick. And that leads us straight into 3, which is Phantom Thread. Phantom Thread is another one that I think is a little underappreciated. It has a good reputation, critics like it and stuff. I just feel like not as many people have seen it as some of his other movies. I know that I myself have recommended it to numerous friends, and they almost all have really dragged their feet on seeing it, and I kind of get it. It doesn't sound like it's going to be a super interesting movie. It's kind of genteel, and it's about a dressmaker who falls in love with a waitress, and there's just something about it. It seems like it would be kind of boring, but it's not. It's a really, really great, character-driven, dark. I think of it as a romantic comedy, kind of like Punch Drunk Love. It's, not a ha-ha, laugh-a-minute kind of comedy, but there is a dark sense of humor kind of riding under the surface of it that I really appreciate. And I think it's a funny movie at times. But it's also dramatically, very effective. Daniel Day-Lewis is, mesmerizing as usual. And Vicky Krieps, who plays the waitress opposite him, steps right up as his equal and turns in a fantastic performance as Alma. The dynamic between them is really interesting, and the movie does have sort of a perverse twist that I won't give away here. But if you haven't seen it, check out Phantom Thread. It's another terrific Paul Thomas Anderson movie. I really don't have any complaints about it. It's great. I'd probably give it 8.75 out of 10, if not maybe even a 9, and it is my number 3 pick. Number 2 is probably going to be the most controversial one, other than maybe One Battle After Another being so low on the list. My number 2 is his debut film, Hard 8. I love Hard 8. And I think it is easily the most underappreciated and underrated movie in Paul Thomas Anderson's catalog. I particularly love Philip Baker Hall. He played the library cop in Seinfeld, in the library cop episode of Seinfeld. A lot of people would know him from that. I have to admit, that was my first exposure to him. But he's a terrific character actor, and he's the star of the show in Hard 8. It's his movie. The movie was originally supposed to be called Sydney, which is the name of his character in the movie, but the studio changed it to Hard 8, which I think Paul Thomas Anderson wasn't too crazy about. I actually think Hard 8 is a better title. It's a little more mysterious, a little less on the nose, but whatever. But Philip Baker Hall's performance in this movie is, to me, up there with Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood and Joaquin Phoenix in The Master. It's one of those Paul Thomas Anderson characters and performances that need to be seen. He's so hypnotizing and so compelling every moment he's on screen. John C. Reilly is terrific in the movie, in that kind of half comedic, half dramatic sort of role that he does very well. Gwyneth Paltrow is in the movie, and she's fine. She does a good job. Samuel Jackson has a turn here in a somewhat antagonist sort of role, and he's really good. And the story is one of Paul Thomas Anderson's tightest and most satisfying. It is, maybe tightest is a little... Paul Thomas Anderson isn't really known for tight movies, and there is a looseness to Hard 8 as it kind of meanders through its story a little bit, but it builds to a clear emotional payoff that for me is one of the most powerful emotional payoffs in any Paul Thomas Anderson movie. If you haven't seen Hard 8, I highly recommend that you check it out. And if you've seen it but haven't seen it in a while, I recommend going back and giving it a fresh look, because it's a really terrific movie that deserves, I think, much more credit than it tends to get. And it's actually my number 2 pick of all of Paul Thomas Anderson's films. And that leaves us with number 1, which is going to be much less surprising. It is There Will Be Blood. You know, a part of me almost hates to admit it, but in the case of There Will Be Blood, I have to go along with the consensus opinion that it is his masterpiece. I remember Quentin Tarantino talking about There Will Be Blood and saying something that I agree with, that was to the effect of, the first time that you see There Will Be Blood, it's such an overpowering and unique experience that you almost can't even really have a intelligible conversation about it right after you first see it. You sort of have to digest it and see it again. And that was my experience with the movie. I remember renting it on DVD back the year that it came out. I unfortunately didn't see it in the theaters. I wish I had, but I saw it at home on a nice big screen TV, and I watched it alone the first time I saw it. And I remember when it was done, just sitting there kind of dumbstruck, thinking to myself, what the fuck did I just watch? What was that? I had never seen anything quite like it. It was so epic and American, but so strange and unusual, but not in an aggressively weird way, just in a way that I just had never seen another movie anything like it. Daniel Day-Lewis's performance as William Plainview, of course, is absolutely incredible. It's certainly one of, if not my favorite movie performance by an actor of all time. Daniel Plainview is an absolutely hypnotizing character to watch every second that he's on screen. I think Paul Dano does a terrific job as Eli Sunday and Paul Sunday. I kind of wish he had cast different actors in those two roles, because there is this confusion that's created. And I've seen it in like people reacting to the movie on YouTube and stuff, where people think he's maybe the same character, but they're not sure. And they're two different characters. There shouldn't really be any confusion about it, and I'm not sure why Paul Dano had to play both roles. Maybe there was some logistical reason for it, but he does a very good job. I don't agree with Quentin Tarantino on that point, that he's weak sauce or whatever it was Tarantino said about him. I think he does great. I really liked some of the other actors in the movie too, in some of the small roles, like Jim Downey as the realtor, Al. Like, he's only in a couple scenes and barely has any lines, but I really liked him. And I really liked the guy who plays Fletcher Hamilton, his like right-hand man who's just always kind of looming there. I really liked H.W. I thought the kid, I'm not big on kid actors. I'm a pretty hard sell when it comes to child actors, but I thought that kid did an amazing job. I thought he was perfect. I also really liked the girl who played Mary Sunday. I thought she did a terrific job too. And of course, the actor, I can't think of his name, but the actor who plays the fake brother that comes in is also really terrific. And that's a performance that I think it's so easy for some of these other performances in the movie to be overshadowed by Daniel Day-Lewis's achievement. But everyone in it is really, really good. It's, of course, a beautifully shot movie. The imagery from the movie is iconic and interesting. The editing is really interesting. It has this kind of overlapping quality to the scenes that a lot of Paul Thomas Anderson's movies have, where he'll cut the scene visually, but he won't cut the sound to match it. The sound will sort of lag behind or cut ahead, and it creates this interesting sort of weaving together. It creates sort of a mosaic effect that's really interesting and effective and sort of emotionally intense. And it's a technique he uses in a lot of his movies, but I think it works particularly beautifully here. And it's really accentuated again by Jonny Greenwood's terrific score. That partnership between Paul Thomas Anderson and Jonny Greenwood is a very good one. It's yielded a lot of really good soundtracks, and this is one of the stronger ones. The soundtrack also benefits from the work of Arvo Pärt. I'm probably saying his name wrong. Let me know what the correct pronunciation is in the comments if you can. But he's a classical composer. I really like his work, even if I don't know how to pronounce his name. And the pieces of his that they use in this movie are some of my favorite pieces of his. But beyond that, I don't know what more I can add that hasn't already been said. I don't really give out 10 of 10s, but I would give this probably a 9.5 out of 10. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, and if you haven't seen it, you definitely should. If you've made it this far, thanks for sticking with me and hearing out my rambling thoughts about this. This is my first attempt at a video like this. If you like it, please leave a like and subscribe, and maybe I will make some more. And I'll see you next time.